The United States of America, home to 300 million people. Each of us assuming that if we obey the law and mind our own business, there's no reason for anyone to pay much attention to us. That's what we might think, but we would be wrong.
Records are being created of activities that used to be wholly private.
There are a lot of companies that you've never heard about, but they've heard something about you.
Detailed personal information is being collected every day and used in ways we could never imagine.
Most Americans are in your database somewhere, right?
Also billions of transactions.
Internet searches are being recorded.
They keep everything. Your political leanings, your religious leanings, your medical concerns, your sexual concerns.
Driving habits are being monitored.
Vehicle speed, engine speed, whether the brakes were on or off.
Employees are surveilled.
He's heading back to the shop right now.
Shoppers are observed, recorded, and analyzed.
That's an alert right there.
And personal phone calls?
I was under the impression that nobody could steal my cell phone records. As it turns out, I was very, very wrong.
We are living through a revolution, a surveillance revolution empowered by technology.
Literally within 5 to 7 minutes, we've identified the individual.
It's technology that can be put to good use to stop terrorists and solve crimes. But if information falls into the wrong hands, or it's just plain wrong, it can ruin lives.
I went without a job for months.
Tough 4 months.
Very, very difficult for me.
From implantable chips
They make a small incision in your arm.
to data mining companies,
Well, how secure is that database?
we take an unprecedented look at the powerful business of personal information.
We're not mining to the personal lives of innocent Americans.
The government is now working with big business to take surveillance and information gathering to levels that were once the stuff of science fiction.
Big Brother, if allowed to happen, will happen. And our job as responsible human beings in society is to make sure that that does not occur.
It was a horrific automobile collision.
It was the biggest tragedy in the state of Michigan. The entire family was wiped out.
In May 2005, a drunk driver, speeding and out of control on this road in Farmington Hills, Michigan, slammed his Yukon Denali SUV into a car carrying Judith Weinstein, her 12-year-old son, Alex, and 9-year-old son, Sam. All three were killed.
It's my understanding this matter is going to be a plea, is that correct?
49-year-old Thomas Wellinger, the driver of the Yukon, was charged with 3 counts of second-degree murder. Crucial evidence used against him was obtained from a device in his own car, a device that was tracking his driving without his knowledge. If you've bought a car in the last few years, chances are you have one too. It is known as an Event Data Recorder, or EDR, also referred to as a black box. It captures what happens in an automobile in the seconds before and after its airbag is released.
Ken Frazee on behalf of the people of the state of Michigan.
Oakland County Prosecutor Ken Frazee says the data recovered from the black box has played a crucial role in a number of his cases, including this one.
Your Honor, the data that was testified to in court indicates that the defendant was traveling consistently at approximately 70 miles an hour. Now, this was in excess of the speed limit. The engine throttle speed also shows that the throttle was heavily engaged, and for the 5 seconds prior to impact, the black box demonstrated in this case that there was no attempt at braking. It's very powerful information because of the fact that it is a solid technology
Santa Barbara, California-based Vetronics sells the technology that allows law enforcement to download data from a car's black box. Andrew Bunch is a product developer.
There's a few different data parameters that are recorded. We have vehicle speed, engine speed, percent throttle, and then brake switch status, which...
This device, it's called a black box, but it's not black.
Right. This is actually an airbag control module. Any vehicle that has an airbag system is going to have an airbag control module installed in it. Whether or not it records data is,
You can stick a chip in anything these days to record this information.
Exactly. So that after deployment of the airbags, it will actually record some of the data that we've seen here.
The conditions for these pleas that were entered today is that you will never drive a motor vehicle for the rest of your life. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
Partly because of the undisputed evidence provided by the black box, Wellinger pled no contest during pretrial motions. He will serve a minimum of 19 years in jail.
There are some people who argue that this could be a death sentence for you in view of your age. Are you aware of that?
In the case of Thomas Wellinger, an advance in technology worked to put a menace to society behind bars. That is one of the benefits of the world we live in, where technology of all types is able to capture evidence of our behavior, evidence that can be used to find and punish those guilty of committing crimes. But privacy advocates warn that while devices such as the black box offer advantages, they can also carry risks. A minor technological advance, for example, could enable a black box to monitor your driving all the time, allowing the police to issue speeding tickets without officers actually being present, or insurance companies to judge your driving habits before determining your rates.
With knowledge...
George Washington University law professor Daniel Solove is an expert on privacy law.
I think that a lot of the purposes for gathering the information are quite benign. What's bad is the fact that the person whose information is being collected is so out of the loop in this process, has no rights, because right now it's the case where they'll gather the information, they'll use it for one purpose, it's great, but secretly they could be using it for another purpose.
One example, the Global Positioning System, GPS as it's known, is now used commercially to help people navigate their automobiles. But it's not hard to go from use to abuse. Consider the case of Eric Adero.
I didn't know about it. These guys were tracking me. They knew each and every street that I'd been in Las Vegas, where I'd stayed, stopped, slept.
In December of 2003, Adero booked a rental car to drive round trip from his home in Los Angeles to Las Vegas. When he returned the car in Los Angeles, he received a bill for over $1,400, about $1,200 more than the fee he'd been quoted.
And I asked why. He told me he used the vehicle to go out of the state of California.
Unbeknownst to Adero, the rental car company imposed an additional charge for driving out of state. And somehow, the agent knew he had gone to Las Vegas.
Then I said, how did you know I went to Las Vegas? They said, we know you went to Las Vegas. Then I said, prove it that I went to Las Vegas.
The rental car agent handed Adero this map that showed he had crossed the California state line on December 29th at 12:29 p.m.
This guy finally told me there was a GPS system pre-installed in the vehicle. No one had told me about that.
The GPS chip in Adero's car allowed the rental car company to track his every move. As soon as the car touched Nevada soil, he was charged $1 for every mile driven for the entire trip.
And so there was, my privacy was all gone.
In October of 2004, Adero and 139 others took part in a class action suit against Acceleron Corporation, the owner of 2 Payless rental car franchises in San Francisco. The suit alleged that customers were unaware the company was using GPS technology to track their driving and were surprised by the penalties to drive out of state. The lawsuit was settled. Adero and the others were refunded the additional fees charged for driving outside California. It's not just devices in cars that are tracking people's behavior.
A lot of devices that people are using, everyday devices like printers and computers and cell phones, are including some kind of tracking information.
Like that color laser printer you have at home or the office. Every page printed by most color laser printers is embedded with a code unique to that printer. Yep, your color laser printer could be spying on you. Seth Schoen is a privacy advocate with the Electronic Frontier Foundation. His work has led to the cracking of those codes.
My understanding is that this was motivated by a request from the United States Secret Service, which investigates counterfeit, and that they asked the manufacturers of color laser printers to do this, to add this tracking capability. And by and large, the manufacturers complied. Most of them didn't tell their customers that they were doing so.
The code, a series of yellow dots distributed across the back of the printed page, is not visible to the naked eye.
See the dots there. When you shine a blue light and look under the microscope, I think it's quite distinct.
It is.
So far, we've been able to crack the code that's used by Xerox and a few other manufacturers like Dell, so we can tell you what those mean. There are others like HP and Canon that are still a mystery to us.
In the case of Dell and Xerox, what is it then that these dots are communicating?
Well, they're communicating the serial number of the printer that made the print, and they're also communicating, in the case of Xerox printers, which have this information, the date and time that the print was made.
From there, it's not hard to find out who printed the document. And it's not just your printer. That digital camera you're so fond of?
This is a photograph of me that was taken as a staff photo. If we look at it with the right software, all of a sudden we see a lot more information. So here's the interesting thing. Right there is the unique serial number of my friend's camera. If he's registered for a warranty, then they know who he is.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's easy to find because he publishes his photos on a photo sharing website under his own name. And so you could immediately find out that that's his camera.
Burn any CDs lately?
Another one that the public is not really aware of. When you burn a CD in a CD burner, the CD burner's serial number is actually left on the CD. So if you make a mixed CD for someone, or you burn any kind of information onto a CD and give it out to someone, it's potentially traceable back to your computer.
All of this may seem innocuous, but in time, it may not be.
I think people are perfectly happy to adopt a communications device that is in some way traceable or trackable, because they think, well, I don't have anything to hide, and I don't use it in a way that someone could track. And then lo and behold, technology advances. They sign up for all kinds of services, and they're using that technology in a way in which things are exposed and things are trackable that they hadn't anticipated.
My name is Richard Hayes. I'm a supervisory Border Patrol agent here in the Yuma sector. The United States Border Patrol's primary mission is now to prevent terrorists and weapons of mass destruction from entering the United States, as well as to continue on with our traditional mission of enforcing our country's immigration laws.
¿Cómo se llama? Ramón? Okay. Allí.
Yuma, Arizona is home to the busiest Border Patrol station in the United States. Last year, agents in the sector arrested over 138,000 people who tried to cross into the U.S. illegally.
Anywhere between 400 to 600, maybe sometimes as high as 700 individuals that are apprehended in a 24-hour time period. Those individuals will be brought into this area.
The process of deciding the fate of each detainee is made a whole lot easier by biometrics, the science of using biological properties such as fingerprints to identify individuals. For decades, border agents were forced to take fingerprints the old-fashioned way, with ink. Now, those fingerprints are scanned. That can almost instantly reveal whether someone is a felon.
It's really streamlined our processing capabilities and has allowed our agents to easily and quickly identify those individuals that have been arrested in the United States or may have criminal warrants for their arrest.
Dr. Joseph Attic, a pioneer in biometrics, is the CEO and president of Minnesota-based Identix. The company sells fingerprint, facial, and skin biometric systems used for security and identification.
Our body is filled with patterns that are called today biometric patterns. that can be imaged and analyzed by algorithms in order to establish your identity.
Dr. Attic has been at the forefront of some of the technology's most significant breakthroughs.
An imaging device or a scanner can take a picture of your fingerprint, and a computer algorithm can analyze the way the different singularities, like the breaks in the finger ridges and how they relate to each other. So it allows law enforcement to look back in their data and records through a computerized system.
Prior to us utilizing biometrics, it would actually require us to search records telephonically or over the computer based on an individual's name and date of birth. Individuals would commonly use aliases, and it would make our job much more difficult.
What took days, weeks, or even months now occurs in about 5 minutes.
This individual whose fingerprints had just been captured utilizing the IAFIS system, or Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System. It compares those prints to previously recorded fingerprints and biometric information and compares that against the FBI database, and will let us know if that individual has a criminal history here in the United States, they have been previously arrested, or they have a criminal warrant for their arrest.
The FBI's database, which holds the fingerprints of 51 million people, is here in Clarksburg, West Virginia. The center processes about 70,000 prints a day, 5,000 of them from the U.S. Border Patrol.
They come into this server, which is our AFIS server. It processes the fingerprints that come in and makes a determination if we have prints on file or not. And we process those 5,000 prints and turn them around in approximately 30 seconds back to the sender. You can only imagine if we had to physically send in the fingerprints, what that would entail. But these are basically dots and dashes, like any type of digital information.
The dots and dashes leave the FBI server and return to Yuma in the form of valuable information.
His fingerprints have indicated, after being compared with those on file with the FBI, that he has been previously arrested in the United States for domestic violence. This individual could possibly be set up for criminal prosecution based upon his criminal history here in the United States.
You lift your fingers.
Biometrics is not just used to identify criminals at the border.
Very nice teamwork.
Andrea LaRosa is a special education teacher in the Macomb County Intermediate School District in Michigan.
They're fingerprinting everybody. As far as I know, they're going to be stored in a database with just some general background information, how much I weigh, what's my height, what's my gender, and that kind of thing. And it doesn't bother me. You never know who's going to be out there. We got to protect our students and our kids.
Absolutely.
Teresa Pomeroy is the Human Resources Supervisor in Macomb. Pomeroy says the prints are crucial to determining if an employee has a criminal record.
The one advantage, certainly, is there's a 3 to 5 day turnaround. Before, we used to offer a position conditionally, because with the ink prints, we would wait 4 to 6 weeks.
Macomb is one of many school districts amassing biometric fingerprint databases. Such databases have also become popular in corporate America, particularly in the banking and securities industry. And it's not just fingerprints.
Some of the more recent patterns that have become very useful in establishing human identity include the iris of the eye. And even more recently, it was discovered that the human skin, the face, the texture of that skin is very unique. You can look at the face as a canvas, and the texture of that canvas can establish your identity.
Today, biometric facial recognition is becoming an everyday occurrence at departments of motor vehicles.
There are today about 15 or 16 states that have facial recognition in order to ensure the uniqueness of the identity before they issue the driver's license.
The State Department.
The U.S. Department of State uses facial recognition against 50 million records to check for fraud. It is an inventor's dream come true.
The international arrival gates at some airports.
The last frontier is going to be basically allowing people to travel unobstructed, unhindered, simply using their trusted identity.
The Pinellas County Sheriff's Department, whose jurisdiction includes St. Petersburg and Clearwater, Florida, was the first in a growing number of law enforcement agencies across the country using facial recognition biometrics to identify criminals.
Stand all over the camera for me, okay?
Police use it when apprehending potential suspects on the street.
It makes it easier by allowing me to quickly identify individuals who are not being truthful about their name.
Or during the booking process. Melvin Burney is brought in for failure to appear in court to answer charges of driving with a suspended license. A quick photo reveals that Burney is no stranger to this process, having been arrested previously for domestic battery and burglary. Lieutenant Jim Main helped bring facial recognition technology to Pinellas in 2001.
If you can straighten your head up just a bit. Thank you very much.
At first, it was only used at the precinct.
Hold that pose right there. Come on now.
But in 2004, the technology was brought into patrol cars.
One more. That's perfect. Hold on. Hold it right there. Okay?
Facial recognition does very fast searches. Basically what the technology does, it maps 128 different points on the face. It measures all the different angles of the face and uses those measurements to convert it then into ones and zeros. Computers can search ones and zeros a lot faster than searching image against image against image. So it does this conversion, and then it searches our database and then some databases that we partner with other agencies across the state. And in about 15 seconds, it brings back some possible matches for the deputy then to determine whether they have that person in front of them.
In January of 2001, fans attending the Super Bowl in Tampa were surprised to learn their faces had been captured by cameras and then scanned against a database of known and suspected felons.
The main issue that people had with that deployment was that you're talking just a public place where, mom and dad and their kids are just going to a public setting, walking around the streets, no probable cause, no reasonable suspicion that they're doing anything wrong, and just taking their pictures and running their images to see if they can identify them.
What about the idea that in public places, the local police will have cameras that are just scanning the crowd, doing or running through image after image after image?
But you see, it is not technology that's going to dictate the use of an application in society. It's society's needs and values. And in my opinion, we can improve security and deliver enhancement to our security without having what we call wide area surveillance. Personally, I'm against wide area surveillance.
But isn't it a difficult line for you to walk? I mean, you're one of the pioneers in developing this technology. You help run a company that, of course, makes money from selling as much as it can the idea of being able to use facial recognition for good purposes. And yet you also are saying that, well, we've got to make sure it's not used too widely because that would endanger privacy.
But you see, the technology is so powerful that it has many, many good applications. Why do we want to focus on the negative of the technology and promote it so that a backlash could come in and would prevent us from actually reaping the benefits of this technology in the areas where it should be used?
What about the idea of Big Brother, which I'm sure you've heard many times whenever you discuss this subject and your development of this technology?
Big Brother is a concern. Big Brother, if let and allowed to happen, will happen. And our job as responsible human beings in society is to make sure that that does not occur.